as we go. If we don't get through all of them, I'll make a little crib sheet and write down those questions we don't get to, and get our 2 clubhouses and myself back in touch with you to help address it. But I think we'll be able to do this. Medicaid, as most of you know, is a federal system of health insurance for those requiring financial assistance. Many clubhouses have a system in place for billing Medicaid for clubhouse services. And while Medicaid is a federal program, these billing services are often done through state Medicaid agencies. And as you guys all know, while we'll have 50 states, it often can seem like Medicaid is administered in 50 different ways in 50 different states. If you don't already have Medicaid billing for your clubhouse, we hope that this workshop will give you some strong ideas and practices in obtaining it. If you already have Medicaid billing and you want to do it better than you do it now, we hope this workshop will help you in that area as well. Toward this end, we're excited to have Jay Brubaker and David Sellers from Circle City Clubhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana, who are going to share the Indiana Medicaid story of effective lobbying and advocacy in successfully obtaining Medicaid funding for their clubhouses in Indiana, how it's working in their state, how it's tied to accreditation, and other practical takeaways in this workshop about what did and what did not work for them based on their experiences. We also know that many clubhouses struggle with engaging members in the Medicaid work. We often hear stories of staff members cobbled into corners of the clubhouse, furiously writing their notes, or even taking the billing work home with them in order to meet the paperwork demands that Medicaid often requires. To address this common problem, we have Lisa Susie and James Sweet from High Hopes Clubhouse in Waterville, Maine, who will share how they engage members in the Medicaid process in their work order day. And I warn you, many of you who know Lisa know that she doesn't mess around in making sure that members are included in all the work of the clubhouse, and this is a particularly tricky area that they do really well. High Hopes will also touch upon the telehealth area of Medicaid billing, as all of us are having conversations about clubhouse hybrid services and combining our virtual clubhouse supports with our building-based services, and how this can become a part of or should be used going forward when the COVID pandemic is past us. We'll conclude the session and coming back with questions from you. So while the session's going, enter your questions in it, and I'll moderate that at the end. Unfortunately, while I typically like to bring Hawaiian chocolates to workshops that I'm involved with, it's a little challenging to do that today. So if one of our drawing prizes is a Hawaiian prize packages, so I hope one of you guys wins if you're coming to our workshop today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jay and David from Circle City Clubhouse in Indiana.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate that introduction. And I don't know, I was promised chocolates for showing up today, so I'm not sure how this is going to work. Really appreciate you guys all joining us for this incredibly exciting topic about Medicaid. We have a really interesting story in Indiana about how Medicaid has worked for us. And we can move on to the next slide. Prior to 2010, Indiana clubhouses were able to bill for clubhouse services through a Medicaid day treatment code. That worked really well for a while, and we all thought, hey, this is great, we've got funding, we're good, until 2009, when we heard a rumor that the state was considering discontinuing that code. That was a little bit of a problem. And so, you know, apparently there was some changes happening at the federal level that Indiana thought was going to impact the way that we were going to be able to use Medicaid in the state, and determined that that code could no longer be used for clubhouses. So the Indiana Coalition said, hey, you know, we need that funding. And they got together. They started reaching out to state officials, to legislators, to advocacy groups. Unfortunately, it ultimately didn't work. And in 2010, that funding went away. It was devastating in Indiana. We had clubhouses all across the state close. By the end of 2010, there were only 4 clubhouses still in operation in Indiana, or sorry, 3 clubhouses in Indiana still in operation, one of which was accredited. Fortunately, folks didn't give up. And it started with Carriage House in Fort Wayne, who began a full-on advocacy for state funding for Medicaid. They started reaching out and talking to legislators, then state administrators. They involved media and made a public appeal. They hired a lobbyist. Over the next few years, we had 4 new Clubhouse startups get started and join the effort. And finally, in 2016, the state of Indiana instituted a new psychosocial rehabilitation Medicaid code that was designed to be billed exclusively by accredited clubhouses. Next slide, please. We'll look a little bit at what that code looks like in Indiana. One of the things that the state had identified as very important is they wanted to ensure there was some sort of quality control mechanism in place. So one of the things that was written into our Medicaid code is that clubhouses have to be accredited by Clubhouse International. We were also able to get the Clubhouse International standards incorporated by reference into the code, which basically means that our code says these services are provided in accordance with the Clubhouse International standards, which means that as those standards grow and change, our Medicaid definition grows and changes with those. There's a really unique challenge in the state of Indiana in that all clubhouses have to have a community mental health center partner. So for some clubhouses, they're owned by a community mental health center. That works very easily. For some other clubhouses like us that are independent, we had to go get a partner. The reason for that in Indiana is Indiana funds its state portion of Medicaid by basically taxing the community mental health centers for that portion and asking them to withhold it. So all Medicaid rehab option codes, if you're familiar with Medicaid and know the difference between rehab option for things like skills training, case management, clubhouse, and clinic option, anything that is rehab option can only be billed by a community mental health center. So those are some challenges, but that we've been able to work through. Our actual rate in Indiana is $7.92 per 15 minute that a member attends Clubhouse, which is $31.68 an hour, which is a great rate, except we lose about 1/3 of that to pay the state match. And we do have some percentages to go to our community mental health center partner. However, even with those, Medicaid is a huge bonus for all of us in Indiana that can access it. For us at Circle City Clubhouse in 2019, that totaled about $293,000 or about 52.5% of our operating budget. So it's a pretty big deal for us. We wouldn't be able to serve anywhere near the number of members that we have. We have about 2/3 of our members who are Medicaid eligible. So if we look at our members across the board, including those without Medicaid, what we average is a little bit over $22,250 per active member. So it's been a really big deal. And we wanted to kind of share a little bit of what we've learned over the past couple years as we've advocated for that code, give you some successes that we had, tell you a few of our mistakes in hopes that if you're looking to add Medicaid funding or if you have questions about it, maybe we can give you a little bit of a hand. So next slide, please. I think one of the first things that we learned as a coalition is that advocacy is an ongoing process. As we learned to our great sorrow and loss, just because you have funding today doesn't mean that you will have funding tomorrow. State officials change, new legislators get elected, new administrators come in with new new governors. If you're not consistently making an effort to reach out to those folks, it's a problem. When we lost funding in 2009, we didn't know who was the head of the State Department of Mental Health. We didn't know who headed up the state Medicaid office, and it hurt us. And so it's one of those things that we have learned to be proactive about as we continue to move forward. Next slide, please. I think the second most important thing that we learned is do Clubhouse well. States want to know that the money that they are spending for services help people, help change lives, and help people recover. And so if you're going to do Clubhouse, take the time to do it well. Go to Clubhouse International conferences, send people to colleague training, get accredited. I guarantee you, Clubhouse International wants every bit as much as you do for your clubhouse to be successful, and adding that kind of support is only going to help you in the long run. Next slide, please. The next tip that we really learned is to build and maintain relationships and awareness of Clubhouse. And this takes work. It takes effort. Some of the things that we have done as a coalition and as individual clubhouses, probably the first is just to invite people to come and see your clubhouse. Bring in your local legislators, state administrators, local officials, your party leaders, political donors. Bring in other provider and advocacy groups like NAMI or Mental Health America. Reach out to your local media. Reach out to community leaders, people that are activists, business leaders, your local service clubs like Rotary or Kiwanis. Getting those people through to actually see what Clubhouse does and hear members' stories is an incredible way to expose individuals to Clubhouse. But don't just invite people. Get out in the community as well. Attend and present or be present at conferences in your area. One of the things that we recently did was invite our deputy director of our State Department of Mental Health to come and talk at a board meeting about some issues that the state was working on for our board of directors. Go to your state capitol and hold advocacy days there. And importantly, be very creative about the folks that you're invited. There's a great story that happened in Clubhouse. I don't know how many of you know Andy Wilson, the director at Carriage House. If you don't know him by the end of this week's conference, you probably will, as Andy's a very outgoing individual. Andy was attending a local conference and saw a young woman sitting alone at a table, and Andy, being the outgoing person that he was, sat down and struck up a conversation. What just so happened that young woman was the spouse of our new head of Office of Medicaid Planning in Indianapolis. And so we were able to start building a relationship that way. So be creative. If you can't get the governor's partner. If you can't get the legislator, get their chief of staff, get their children. Find the political donors. Find the people that have your legislators and administrators' ears and get them to come. The next tip that we learned is to really know your audience. Be bipartisan. We have been doing some virtual tours of Circle City Clubhouse recently with local political candidates. We have a very competitive election in one of our districts between a Republican and Democratic senator. I'm very ecstatic about the fact that they have both been to Clubhouse. Both are on board with what we do. And so we're not sitting and waiting for the results of an election to find out whether the candidate that knows us is the one that gets elected. We've already built those relationships. Work collaboratively. There is a wealth of experience and knowledge in your Clubhouse community and in the Clubhouse international community at large. No matter what the question is you're facing, my guess is somebody around the Clubhouse international community has faced that and will have some answers, or at least some, hey, this is what worked or didn't work for us, that they can give you. Part of working collaboratively is to get everybody on the same page. I was very lucky to come in at kind of the tail end of some of the Medicaid advocacy originally in 2015 when we opened at Circle City Clubhouse. And in one of my first weeks on the job, we had a board member that helped get me into a listening session with our local U.S. representative on mental health. So I was very excited. We went, we talked about mental health issues, we talked about funding for mental health, we talked about the need for more inpatient space, and I spoke up and said, well, you know, part of why we don't have enough inpatient space is we don't have enough funding for community services like Clubhouse that helps people stay out of mental health institutions. And I got the senator to say, well, what's Clubhouse? And I got to introduce what we were doing to all sorts of high-powered folks in the room. And my board member speaks up and says, well, I just want to make sure everybody understands that it's Clubhouse international policy not to accept government funding anywhere unless they're required to do so. I thought I was going to be out of work the next day. That clearly is not Clubhouse international policy. Very fortunately, I was able to talk to Joel Kokorin, who very kindly called the board member and said, no, that's not how things work. I was able to talk to other Clubhouse folks who were working on our Medicaid advocacy to make sure that that wasn't the message that got heard by the people we were talking to. But it's just an example of how important it is to really make sure that you're working together, that you're all sharing the same story and the same goals, and that you're speaking as much as you can with one voice. Next slide. One of the other things that we've learned is to claim the Clubhouse success that we have had. In 1949, there was a Nobel Prize awarded in mental health. And I don't know if Jack has any more chocolates that he can send to someone that gets this right. But if you don't know, that Nobel Prize was for an innovation in how to do lobotomies in a different way. In 1948 was when the original WANA group and Fountain House started. So understand that at the time when the mental health dominant conversation was that the best way to help someone heal is to destroy part of their brain, clubhouses were already saying people with mental illnesses have skills, have value, and can collaborate together to work towards recovery. And as we've continued to learn more and more about how the human brain heals, we see more and more groups lining up behind the concepts that underlie what we do. We see folks from attachment and bonding theorists and family systems theorists now talking about the value of community and relationships with other people. We see folks from industrial and organizational psychology talking about the value of work and how that heals. We know that clubhouses are twice as likely to help members get employed or stay employed. We know that clubhouses drastically reduce the costs of services for healthcare for folks with mental illnesses. Don't be afraid to claim that success. I think in the packet that we have, there's 2 studies that if you haven't heard of yet, you need to check out. One is by Johns Hopkins University and Be More Clubhouse in Baltimore, and one is by New York University and Fountain House that show some incredible statistics in how clubhouses help reduce costs of healthcare for folks they serve. If you're going in to talk to a legislator or a state administrator, nothing speaks stronger than showing them how they can help people get better for less money and do it in ways that no one else can match. And as we show up here, Clubhouse International has this very helpful database on their website where you can look up thousands of articles on all sorts of topics and resources and research that's been done on the Clubhouse model. Next slide. The last thing that I'm going to share with you is to be persistent. It was 7 years from when we lost our Medicaid code in Clubhouse, Indiana, until someone else, or till any of us received our first check from Medicaid for Clubhouse services. During that time, there were multiple times where we had administrators who would say, yeah, this is a great idea, we're going to get it done. And 6 months later, we would be like, wait, where did that person go again? By the time we finally actually got a code in place and were ready to submit it to Center for Medicaid Services, we found out that the state had failed to go through some of the procedural hoops that they needed. And that set us back for another couple months. Once we got the code installed, then there was a whole nother system of getting it into the state's Medicaid computer systems and databases so that people could actually be reimbursed. Stick with it. Don't get discouraged. And last, I'm going to now introduce one of our members, Dave Sellers, who's on our Speakers Bureau. Dave is going to share a little bit about getting members involved in advocacy. Dave has a speech impediment, so I'm going to help review sort of what Dave says so that folks can understand. And if we can move on to the next slide. You ready, Dave?
Board member, it important to a lot of members involved.
It's important to have a lot of members involved.
Work with other groups like NAMI.
Can work and collaborate with other groups like NAMI.
A big bureau.
Can create a speakers bureau for your clubhouse.
Members can keep record of events.
Members can help keep track of clubhouse records of success.
A member can give you or their authority where they work.
It's important, have members give tours or share their stories with state officials.
It's important that they involve a member because we know how it you up in mental illness.
It's important that state officials hear from members because we know how it is to have a mental illness.
It make an impact when people are authority and they get their identity.
It It makes an impact when people hear our stories, and that gets their attention. We're going to turn it over to James and Lisa now to talk more about how they handle the Medicaid process at High Hopes Clubhouse.
Mute. Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the director of High Hopes Clubhouse here in Waterville, Maine.
Hi, I'm James. I'm a member at the High Hopes Clubhouse in Waterville, Maine.
So we're going to present a little bit about Medicaid and how we make it work in our work of the day. That's us right there. Okay, next slide. We'll start it off. So High Hopes Clubhouse opened in 1997, and we opened directly as a Medicaid program under day supports or day treatment, just like in Indiana. And that worked well for years, but we are now under Clubhouse Psychosocial Model, Section 65 of Services. In Maine, that comes with a lot of Medicaid paperwork. We are required to do daily notes and service plans, goal plans, and assessments on occasion. So we had to figure out how to make it work. And as the director, I was really worried with our new electronic medical record system that we call NEO. When that came about, how we're going to keep the members connected with the Medicaid work of the clubhouse and not be squirreled away in a corner furiously writing notes. So we worked with our IT department and developed a member sign-in for the medical records portion of our program. So members have their own sign-in as a member. They can sign in to our electronic medical record, and they can track attendance hours and several other things. So this is James below being our receptionist. So when somebody comes into the clubhouse, we're tracking their in and out, and James is going to talk more about that. But members can actually document things like attendance hours, televideo attendance, wellness attendance, any of that stuff. We have to do progress notes, but Medicaid loves it when members do their own progress notes. And members like to do their own progress notes. So we developed a form where there's hints about how to fill out the progress note and what we're looking for. So members can document their own progress notes. And all the goals that members are working on in their service plan or goal plan is they're all tied directly to the skills that you get through working through a clubhouse. We've included all treatment planning and yearly assessment trainings to involve the members. So anytime we have a treatment planning session with our quality assurance program or our clinical supervisor, they do that right here in the clubhouse and with the membership. As a result, I have found that many of my members can write a much better service plan than I can. Next slide.
This is an example of a sign-in sheet a receptionist at High Hope sees. This is a training sheet and no real member names are used. We call this system NEO. If you look to the left, you can see a list of names alphabetically. To find a member's name quickly, there's a search bar at the top of the members list. You can either type in their first name or their last name. Here we have Eric Andrews' sign-in sheet. Under the date, Friday, September 18th, 2020, is an in button. If you click this, these two things happen. The button changes to an out button, and below an in time appears. In this case, 7:46 a.m. If you click the out button, three things happen. The out button changes to an in button, and an out time appears below. This time is 3:38 p.m. And the NEO calculates the length of stay, 7 hours and 87 minutes. For a more specific Medicaid accreditation, we have activities which can be checked off, such as wellness activity, if the member went for a walk, televideo, if the member joined via Zoom, and TE, transitional employment, if the member had a job site to go to. Finally, the reach out option. Going back to the left of the column names, you will see some numbered names highlighted in yellow, which indicates we have not seen this member for 2 weeks. And it is time to reach out to them. Over to the far right, there is a little reach out box. When you click on this, a bigger box appears in the middle of the screen. Here, members are able to log out reach out attempts and their outcomes. Members' names who have been reached out are highlighted in blue. And that's all I have.
So on this screen, you'll see the length of stay says 7.87. So that when Neo puts that into our notes, that automatically will make it 7.45. So 7 hours and 45 minutes that person attended. And again, know that this is just a training form. So there's no real member names being used. At the top here, you'll see reports, and I really wish I had expanded on this more. That report button gives me immediate stats, either daily, monthly, yearly, quarterly, fiscal year, of exactly how many times we did reach out, who attended televideo, what our daily attendance is, what our young adult membership is, etc. Next slide. So my staff and I are absolutely not hidden away in the clubhouse. To be a good staff member at a clubhouse that has Medicaid work, you have to be able to be very good and very versatile and be able to multitask and do the work that you need to do within the structure of the units. So a staff member sitting down doing a progress note from the previous day is really no different than the staff member sitting down to do an email. There's still work going on around them. They're still answering questions. Members are still approaching them for any needs they may have. So they are not shut in the office. Members, when they complete their own progress notes, they can either deliver them to a staff that they want to input the note for the previous day or that day. Or they can simply drop it in a file box that's in the membership services unit, and then the membership services unit in the morning delivers these notes to the staff member who is assigned to do the note. We looked at it, and approximately 10% of the day is spent on daily notes. So first thing in the morning, you know, break up your team. If you have 3 staff in business, in the business unit, so one staff may be doing notes while they're sitting there, you know, helping people report earnings or whatever, while the other 2 staff are engaging in other activities within the unit. Goal plans and treatment plans. You do hear me say treatment plans. It's not a swear word, it's Medicaid language. So I'm a old woman, and I've been doing Medicaid for about 30-something years, I guess. So treatment plans is the Medicaid language. But in the clubhouse, we really try to talk about goal plans and service plans and what people want to get out of Clubhouse and what is their goal, and really look at it strengths-based. Each of our staff has about 16 members on their caseload. But the really good thing about our electronic medical system is that all staff have access to every single member, so we can all cover for each other. So if I'm working really closely with James for the next month, I'm going to be doing his notes and his goal plan, even though he may be assigned to somebody else. Yearly assessments, we work really, really hard to keep these out of the clubhouse as much as possible. So our agency has 19 programs in the agency, and pretty much every other program trumps us, that's what we call it, to do assessments. Lucky them. So we kind of push that off onto any clinician outside of the clubhouse that we can, but we do have access to that information. If we do have to do an assessment, we have an awesome clubhouse coordinator that comes in and does it in total clubhouse language. not clinical at all, and does it side by side with the member here in the administration area of the clubhouse. We did have a lot of notes to do. You know, typically a staff will have 6 to 8 notes to do a day. So in order to reduce the time and increase the quality of our notes, we invented, actually we stole this from Unlimited Solutions up in Bangor, quick clips that convert all the skills and tasks within a Clubhouse unit into Medicaid language. Next slide, please. So don't worry, I'm not going to read all this, but the top, receptionist, food service, lunch, these are our quick clips. So these have the Medicaid language that Medicaid likes, that members can work on in each of these areas. When we do the note, when we complete the note where it says member participated in membership services unit, the person's name will automatically go in there. So when you complete the note, it's a well-written note that flows easily. It is a Medicaid rule in the state of Maine that we do have to address each person's individual goals with a note that addresses them specifically. So we do have to write a short, we call it blurb at the end. So an example of a note that we would actually write is Lisa attended High Hopes today for a 5-hour time frame to increase feeling of inclusion and reduce isolation. She volunteered in both the business unit and the membership services reception. She continues to help with the opening of the clubhouse when she first arrives. She's observed in engaging in positive and meaningful conversations to strengthen her relationships and interpersonal skills. Lisa continues to work on making more positive statements in regard to herself. She is a hard worker who seems to be staying busy throughout the day as motivation has improved. She is friendly and engaging to others, which promotes connections with others, reducing depression and feelings of isolation. Positive self-talk provided to encourage confidence and self-esteem. So I had a really good day that day. Next slide. This is an example of a report that's run through NEO that the business unit runs, and it's printed out. And the work of the unit is that that members deliver this to each staff that's responsible for upcoming service plans or goal plans. And then they go to work on calling the members that are listed to remind them that their goal plans and service plans are coming up, and to come on into the clubhouse or give us a call, or let's make plans to make this happen. Next slide. Telehealth, Zoom. So the Clubhouse Maine Coalition advocated with DHHS that we keep Zoom after this COVID thing goes away. And, you know, so they had some questions about this. Right now, our rates for Zoom calls are the same as an in-person visit. But it's important that we make sure that our services in telehealth are as valuable as an in-person visit as well. So they have to be productive and substantial. So we wouldn't bill for like watching a movie over Zoom or, you know, something like that. They really have to be involved in the work or the day. So DHHS reached out to Jack Yasko, which we didn't know about until they called me and asked what my opinion of telehealth was, and could Clubhouse keep it and use it effectively. So I went through my spiel, and luckily that matched what Jack had said. So it looks like this may be here to stay for us. So we're pretty excited about that. We really did struggle with, could we provide the same opportunities and experiences via Zoom that happens in a vibrant Clubhouse community every day? We're getting better at it. We really struggled at first, and James will talk about that in a minute. But we really did struggle at first, and it was quite exhausting to be the entertainer all day. But now it's just part of the work of the units. So below you'll see 2 members and a staff member, and they're on Zoom and they're doing a data entry project or a media project or a newsletter or something via Zoom. It's really a balancing act to, especially in bigger house meetings and stuff, to build relationships and pay attention to the members in the building and the members on Zoom. You never want to give up your relationships that are real and in person for Zoom, but you don't want Zoom to be left out. So we got kind of creative around that. Instead of having 2 people run our meetings now, we have 3 people run our meetings now. So nobody is left out. Next slide.
From the member's point of view, Zoom has its advantages, even though there were some challenges. It's a concern that it would promote self-isolation. However, here at High Hopes, we found that it has increased attendance. Members would join on Zoom in the morning meetings and come in the afternoons, or members would come in the mornings and join Zoom in the afternoons. House meetings and unit meetings gave us members and helped staff get structure back to help maintain their routine. When we focused on unit and house meetings, staff were seen and they felt less like entertainers, for we were able to focus on much needed tasks that could be shared over Zoom. That gave members back the feelings of being wanted, needed, and expected. As members, we were not just watching anymore. We could, through remote sharing, have control over what was being done on the computers at High Hopes, as well as be involved in tasks such as newsletters, birthdays, and personnel cards, attendance hours and earnings, and all sorts of data entry. Through Zoom, it enhanced our reach out opportunities, allowing us to have FaceTime connections. We were able to create virtual orientation, allowing both staff and members to be involved, reinforcing the side-by-side idea. Goal plans done over Zoom allowed members to see exactly their records in our EMR system through screen sharing, letting them be able to feel more included in the process. And I'm all set for that.
Next slide. So even though I was very nervous about the telehealth, it's actually grown our relationships and made our relationships stronger. I was just looking at one of our NEO reports today, and in one quarter this year, July 1st through September 30th, we had 183 Zoom connections. So 183 services to members that wouldn't have been in the Clubhouse. So ideas for future use, snowstorms and bad travel. So I was talking earlier with this group that there's about 4 weeks in Maine that's beautiful weather. Other than that, you can count on something that could happen, a snowstorm, a sleet storm, an ice storm, something that prohibits our vans from driving, our volunteer drivers through the Medicaid program from driving. So often in a bad snowstorm, we'll have 5 people in the Clubhouse instead of 55. So snowstorms and bad travel, we can see it being used for that. Sometimes members have other appointments, and James, for instance, lives so far away that if he has an appointment, there's no way he's going to get here. So it lets him go to his appointment and still join the house meetings and policy groups and employment meetings by Zoom. Members that have children during this COVID-19, the schedules are all messed up. So it's kind of nice to be able to have members join our morning meeting by Zoom, and as their kids go to school in the afternoon, they can come in or whatever the case may be. But that's really added some flex time for our members with kids. You want to talk about your situation?
Yeah, when members feel sick but still want to attend, they can still be involved over Zoom. I know this from experience. Just last week I was sick, but I had the opportunity to attend the Clubhouse even though I wasn't physically here.
Yeah, the virtual tour that we did was great. And we do a virtual tour via Zoom for new members that may have really high anxiety, especially at the time of COVID. We also invite members to just join them on a meeting or join a house meeting or a policy meeting or a standards review or a clubhouse education. There's all kinds of ways that you can bring a new member into Zoom and kind of slowly introduce them to the clubhouse community. So below you'll see 3 people running a meeting, connecting with the people on Zoom, but staying focused as well as the people in the group, and then Zoom attendees as well. Next slide. I guess that's it. We're done. Thanks.
Back to Jack.
Back to chat.
Thanks, James and Lisa. I also want to thank Jay and Dave. We have had a number of questions come in. We have 18 minutes left in the session. And so I'm going to go through these, you guys, and then toss you each question, and hopefully you guys can give a brief response. There's about a dozen questions, and I'd really like to get through them all. So here is one that was really popular. And so let's start with you, Jay and Dave. Are there ways to utilize Medicaid ride services before a clubhouse has established Medicaid billing?
Sorry, we're muted for a second. Yeah, so that can be a little bit of an issue from a state to state perspective. So I would check with your state Medicaid officials. We were able to start utilizing Medicaid ride services for Circle City Clubhouse before we as a clubhouse were approved by the state to bill Medicaid because it was a reimbursable code. What we were told is that had it not been a state reimbursable code at that point in time, Medicaid would not have paid for members to come. So I would double check that with your actual state officials, because that can vary from state to state as to how they'll handle that.
Thanks. High Hopes, do you have anything to add to that one?
No, I don't think in the state of Maine they would provide a Medicaid ride if you didn't have a Medicaid contract, at least in the wings.
Okay.
They're pretty strict about it.
Second question. We'll start this time with High Hopes Clubhouse. How do clubhouses maintain member involvement while also remaining HIPAA compliant?
Password.
Yeah, so members, passwords, James says. So members can't see the electronic medical record. So if they click on a member's name to just sign them in, they can't see treatment plans and service plans and goals and all of that stuff. It's just that basic information. And we treat our clubhouse as a group, just like a DBT group or any other therapy group. What kind of happens at Clubhouse stays in Clubhouse, and we're a Clubhouse group. So confidential information is never, just running around the Clubhouse. We do drive HIPAA a little crazy because, just like every Clubhouse that's kind of advanced past that Medicaid fear of using James's full name and my full name, as long as you don't identify everything about James, we're just people.
So James, you had said before we go to Jay and Dave on this one, you said passwords. So do you guys have a pretty good system you feel that is HIPAA compliant regarding what you use?
I think so, yeah. It's hard for members to be able to get onto a staff login.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't. So, and when they do correlation meetings on Mondays, members are allowed to stay for part of it, but then they have to talk about certain members, and that's when members who were part of the meeting leave. So yeah.
Yeah, if there's anything on the rare occasion that there's anything highly confidential, say somebody had a suicide attempt or had been a victim of domestic violence. Obviously, just like with staff, we wouldn't want everybody in the clubhouse to know that. So we pull in the people that are directly involved with that situation, whether it be member or staff, and ask the rest of the group to leave. So we can meet any clinical obligations that we do have.
All right, Jay, let me turn that question over to you. How do clubhouses maintain member involvement while also remaining HIPAA compliant?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of what Lisa is saying for High Hopes, we do very similar things. I think one of the things we talk about a little bit is philosophy behind HIPAA. I mean, obviously HIPAA has a lot of technicalities to it, but at its basic, what it kind of says is our members' health information is their property, and we have to respect that. And just as if, you know, a member handed me the keys to their car, I wouldn't just hand that out to somebody else to go joyriding. If a member's telling me something about themselves that has to do with their diagnosis, that's theirs and I have to respect that. And if I don't have their permission, I don't share that with anybody else. And we talk about that as a group.
We do have releases upon orientation and then yearly after then. And a member can renege them anytime they want. We do have video, phone, and photo releases from every member.
So if anybody on this workshop wanted to get copies of your releases of information, can they get in touch with you to obtain copies of those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, next question. This one is not really a Medicaid one, so maybe I'll take first crack at it, but then I'd like to ask Dave to respond to this because he spoke to this earlier. And the question is, I am newish at Clubhouse, and I was wondering, what is a speakers bureau? A speakers bureau is a group of members and staff at a clubhouse who make organized speeches or presentations out in the community. The basic rationale for this is you don't want your clubhouse just to be known as a small mental health program in your community, but a well-respected entity, just like Rotary clubs or Kiwanis clubs or Boys and Girls clubs or the most well-known respected churches in your community. And so a speakers bureau helps you do that. It helps reduce stigma. And so contact the names of some of those places I just mentioned and get on their docket of speakers. Reach out to high schools, colleges, Voc Rehab, any wide range of anybody that you can get an audience to educate them about what the clubhouse is in the community. And that will help open doors for you, help reduce stigma, create a broader awareness of the clubhouse in the community. Dave, do you want to add anything to that? You mentioned it earlier in your presentation.
Like, we do meet me and we do people.
Yeah, so Dave, one of the things that our Speakers Bureau has done at Clubhouse, at Circle City Clubhouse, for the past about 2 years now, twice a month we're doing what we call Meet Me's at the Clubhouse, where we invite people to come in. This is pre-COVID, we invited people to come in. We would serve a snack or a light breakfast or light lunch. We would introduce Clubhouse, and folks from our Speakers Bureau would share their stories and would give a tour of the clubhouse to folks. Since COVID, we've started doing those remotely by Zoom. So we found out that it works really well for people to join from their computer over their lunch hour. And I follow our folks around for the tour with my iPhone camera, and the camera work sucks, but nobody seems to care. But yeah, I think that was probably one of the first things we started at Circle City Clubhouse when we opened, was a speakers bureau. We had members that liked to share and wanted to share their stories and advocate. We're in Indianapolis, which was the state capital, and we said, if we're going to be here and we're going to do a clubhouse, we need to let people know what we're about. But it really, I think, is about our folks coming together and advocating for each other and themselves.
All right, thanks you guys. Let me keep us moving along. We have 10 more minutes and about 6 more questions. And this one, let's go to start with High Hopes with, I'm interested in hearing about varying methods of member sign-in that hold up in a Medicaid audit. So basically, what kinds of sign-in do you guys use that pass mustered with a Medicaid audit? Let's start with High Hopes.
So we do have a paper sign-in sheet with every single member's name on it, and an in, out, because, you know, sometimes we're 2 doors down from Dunkin' Donuts, so people can tend to leave every once in a while for a cup of coffee. But, and so we have a paper signature form, and then we have the receptionist sitting with the computer with the electronic sign-in. when they walk in the door and they sign the paper, the times match. So we hit in when they sign the paper, and then when they sign out, we hit out and tell them exactly what time the computer says, and that's how it adds up. So we have a huge quality Medicaid quality assurance department, and so our last review, we had 100% accuracy with the wet signature of a member signing in and out. So there's their name, and then they sign their name, and then they're in and out, and then we have it on the computer. And then every day, a member and the staff sit down and do the attendance hours to make sure that we have the correct billing in place.
All right, thank you. Circle City, let me come to you guys with this next question. How do you help members who are uncomfortable with technology track their own hours on the digital database? That could be for either one of you guys. So let's start with you, Jay.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have some of the same digital capabilities that High Hopes does. So we really don't have any way for our members to track their own hours other than our physical sign-in and sign-out sheets. We do also use some Excel spreadsheets that staff and members work together on. But because we work with a partner agency, we have some more barriers to members being in our EMRs that we use. I think the big thing on helping folks be comfortable is kind of the side-by-side work that we all do of staff and members working together to collaborate on this. But Lisa and James, you guys can probably speak a lot more eloquently to that than I can.
Yeah, so the other thing I just wanted to mention, so we have our own, we have 9 little secret men and women down in the cellar at the hospice agency that created our electronic medical record system. And they've been federally funded and recognized and licensed and approved and have gone through the whole gamut. So we're very fortunate that we have that team of people that bring in substantial funding for you know, the award for a great medical record, whatever it is. But so people who aren't interested in technology, they don't have to do a thing. All they have to do is sign their name, and James will take care of them at the receptionist desk.
Yep.
If they want to write their note in handwriting, that's perfectly fine.
This is a related question about the EMR that you mentioned, Jay. What is the name of the EMR record? I don't know if there's, I mean, emergency medical record, or electronic medical record. Do you guys have a name for the EMR record?
So the one that we, that our partner agency, Adult and Child Health, uses is currently Credible. They're actually transitioning that to, I think, something called Next Gen over the next couple weeks. We at Circle City Clubhouse, so one of the things, we have our Medicaid partnership. We also have some partnerships with the VA and self-funding. We use a very basic online EMR for those called Clinic Source that we've been able to build our own notes in as well. So there's a couple different options depending on what your agency needs.
What about you guys, High Hopes?
Our system is called NEO, and it's some geeky movie character.
The Matrix.
The Matrix.
Oh, well, leave it to you guys to know that. So
when I heard you say that earlier, it caught my attention. Let's go on. We have 5 more minutes, have a few more questions here. Do you have a contingency set for members that may lose Medicaid? You want to start with that, Circle City? Do you have a contingency set for members that may lose Medicaid?
Sure. So that is one of the advantages to the way that we operate as an independent clubhouse that has a partnership with a community mental health center. So we have about probably 2/3 of our members at any point in time have Medicaid and are eligible for the psychosocial rehabilitation code. So for those folks that we're getting reimbursed for Medicaid, those are the only folks that we enroll in our partnership with our partner community mental health center. That helps us from their end with some of the Medicaid compliance things. For our folks that do not have Medicaid, we track all of those hours in-house. And we've started a new fundraising campaign that we call our Recovering Life Funding, that goes specifically to cover the cost of those folks coming to Clubhouse. So we will document those hours, create an invoice, and then we use the funds that we raise to cover those costs so that our members don't have to pay out of pocket, and we stay in compliance with Medicaid rules about treating people the same way. We also have a separate partnership with our local veterans hospital that we also use that system for. We don't have to go through our community mental health center for that.
What about you guys, Lisa and James?
So we do have, we have a grant for non-Medicaid payers, a non-Medicaid payer grant. So people that don't have Medicaid can come in under that grant, or members who may lose Medicaid for one reason or another, you know, they forgot to do a review or somebody hit the wrong button. It doesn't interrupt their services at all, and we'll bill the grant. And then when they say they get Medicaid back and it goes retro, then the NEO system, we can just go back and rebill and bill the Medicaid. We also bill mental health long-term supported employment through DHHS, which is a totally different fund for anybody who is working. We just recently gave up our VR grant, so we'll see how that goes. Because we could bill everything under our new Medicaid code, Section 65 code, and the long-term supported employment.
Okay, thank you. 2 minutes and 2 questions left. If your house provides transportation for your members, are you required to use the Medical Assistance Transportation Program, or MATP?
No, but we do not bill for any transportation. We can't bill for any transportation. So anytime we're in a vehicle, but we just use our vans, and we send James after people.
All right, what about you guys, Circle City?
That's a no for us as well. We are in the process of applying to become a Medicaid-funded transportation provider for the state, so that our folks that have Medicaid, we can get reimbursed under that program, hopefully at some point.
We tried that as well, and what we found out in the state of Maine, they said we would have to transport any Medicaid person. So even if they weren't Clubhouse people, so that kind of killed us. Yeah.
Okay. This last question could be Medicaid related and also non. The question is the member staff ratio of about 16:1 ideal? I can say from Clubhouse International and in looking at all the Clubhouse profile questionnaires that Colleen McKay and Dee at the Program for Clubhouse Research gathers, that the average ratio is about 1:18, 1:20, but that's for a fully functioning Clubhouse that provides a full array of employment supports, evening, weekend programs, community supports, basically trying to meet all 8 categories of the 37 standards. That ratio of 1:18, 1:20, 1:16 is good. High hopes. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the 1-16, I have staff that have 20 people on their caseload, and I have people that have 14. I carry a caseload as the director, so it's spread out. Right now, I have 167 members, and we're at about 55 average daily attendance. So if you do a TE note, and then you have to do a Medicaid note, and then you have to do a long-term supported note, you know, along with group notes, you could have 5 to 8 notes a day. But as far as a caseload, 16 is a good number. It's a workable number to keep up with everything.
What about you, Circle City? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, so we have a couple different pieces. Overall, if we look at like our active membership and our number of folks in terms of staff, we're at about 1 to 20, which is probably a little high. Unfortunately, because of some of the transportation challenges, our daily attendance isn't quite as great. But we're contractually limited with our community mental health center partner that we need to have 1 staff per every 8 average daily attendance. So we kind of have to juggle both of those at the same time.
Got it. Hey, we just had one comment here that says, thank you all, great presentation. Thank you for that comment. With that, we're going to wrap it up. We're at the conclusion of our time with you guys today. And so I really want to give a shout out to Dan from Intuitive Conference and Events, who's been the guy behind the scene, the wizard man, operating all the technological things. And thank you to Circle City Clubhouse in Indiana and High Hopes Clubhouse in Maine for covering a topic that can be a little dry, hard. You know, it's not the most in vivo, exciting kind of topic, but it's an important one. Well over 100 clubhouses in the U.S. get Medicaid funding. It continues to be a challenge for us. But I think in evidence of Circle City and High Hopes Clubhouse are both strong accredited clubhouses who have amalgamated Medicaid funding and still maintain the integrity to the standards of the clubhouse model. It can be done. All right. Well, thank you very much, you guys. Thank you for coming to the conference. We appreciate it. We look forward to you joining us tomorrow. And we'll start at 1 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. And don't forget, we have a dance party tomorrow evening as well.